Hello, everybody. Welcome to CQL's Lunch Kit webinar series. We are excited to present to you today how organizations across Canada are using the personal outcome measures. We have several panelists with us today that are going to share their experience with the personal outcome measures. And really what we want to accomplish today is just to have a conversation and share some strategy in utilizing the personal outcome measures. Personal outcome measures can be used for a variety of things. We can use them for enhancing quality on the individual level. We can use them for person-centered planning, and we can use them for enhancing quality on the organizational level as well. So thank you all for joining us today. So a little bit about CQL. If you're not familiar with us, we work with organizations to improve their quality of services. And we are really about measuring. So the personal outcome measures are one of the ways that we measure quality, one of the ways that we use to learn about people and the services that we provide. CQL is an organization that works with organizations in Canada and in the US and all over the world. So the personal outcome measures are divided into 5 factors: my human security, my community, my relationships, my goals, my choices. We have 21 personal outcome measures, and we'll just go through them real quick. We have my human security, so we have 7 personal outcome measures in this area. We have my community. We have 4 personal outcome measures in this area. My relationships, so outcomes related to relationships that people have. We have 5 in that area. And choices. These are the choices that people make about their lives, choosing where and who they live, where they work, their services, and my goals. People choosing personal goals and people realizing personal goals. And as I mentioned, we can use the personal outcome measures in a variety of ways. And so I want to turn it over to our first panelist at this point, Jamie Curran, who is the manager of the outcome support team at Community Living Mississauga. And Jamie holds a degree in psychology from York University in Toronto and has been enhancing the lives of individuals with intellectual disabilities for over 20 years. In his role as manager of the outcome support team at Community Living Mississauga, Jamie is responsible for the design, implementation, and evaluation of all quality assurance initiatives. Jamie was certified as a POM trainer and interviewer in 2004 and has participated in accreditation reviews and has conducted and overseen hundreds of interviews using the CQL's personal outcome measures process. Jamie is an experienced presenter and has developed numerous staff training workshops for Community Living Mississauga and at conferences across Ontario and the US. And Jamie has authored an article entitled "Building a Community That is Open to All," and that was in the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation in 2009. So Jamie, thank you for joining us today. I'll let you take it away.
Great, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I'll give you a little a brief bio about what we do here in Mississauga. Our association is like most, but we are a larger association. So I know from speaking to colleagues across the province that a lot of times when it comes to working with personal outcome measures, there's not often a job that's specifically for that in an association. It's usually paired with someone else's job or another add-on to their job. But here in Mississauga, we've been using the outcomes for a really long time. And we have actual outcome support team. So the team consists of myself, I manage our team, and I have 2 support staff that work with me. And we're really responsible for all the outcome stuff that goes on across the organization. So instead of telling you kind of what I do outside of doing interviews, I'll give you a little overview of what our team is responsible for. So our team is responsible for our process for planning using the personal outcome measures. So each person we support residentially, We support over 3,000 people in Mississauga, but residentially we support about 240 currently. So at the time, right now we do outcome interviews with each person once every 2 years. We would like to check in with people more often than that in terms of a full outcome interview, but we just don't have the resources to do that. So once every 2 years, we'll do a personal outcome measures interview. And then on the alternate years, we'll actually do a social capital inventory that we do just to look specifically at people's relationships. Our team is also responsible for developing annual support plans for our residential managers. So we will meet with each residential manager annually and go through each of their individual teams that they work with and outline a plan of how our team is going to support them in the coming year. And one of the things that we do to do this is we attend team meetings. So a member of our team will attend team meetings every quarter for all the teams across our association. And we do this so we can really build a relationship with all the residential teams we have and be that point of contact for all support staff. Over the years, we've noticed that when you have a team dedicated to outcomes, you often get labeled as, you know, the people that are coming out to check in on you and see how you're doing. And it really can be problematic. So we designed a system now where our support staff can go out and get to know the support staff that work in our residential services and really build that relationship so they feel really comfortable coming to us and asking for resources or checking in on new ideas and stuff like that. Our team is also responsible for all of our data collection and reporting in terms of interview results to identify averages and trends. We keep an accurate index for our basic assurance indexes, our social capital index, and our social capital inventories. Our team is responsible for anything to do with our rights restriction process. I act as our staff liaison to our rights review committee. I was part of the team that developed our rights policy and our rights committee mandate, and I oversee the rights restriction process, and we typically do that through our AIMS database. We also are responsible, like our main responsibility is really around staff training and development. We'll do self-assessment workshops 2 times a year, or as our organization requires it. Our full-time employees are required to have completed the full 4-day self-assessment workshop within the first 6 months of hire. And we also do a 1-day personal outcome measures and rights training that's mandatory for all of our new staff. We'll do this up to 8 times a year, depending on the need. And we're also responsible for a 1-day social capital and community connections training, which is also part of our new staff orientation, and we'll do that up to 8 times a year. We host understanding your rights workshops for people we support on an as-needed basis, and my support staff that work on my team will host a Breaking the Barrier session, and we do this 10 times a year. Our Breaking the Barrier session is really an opportunity for all of our frontline support staff to come together in a meeting around whatever topic is going on that month, whatever is important to the support staff or to the barriers they're facing in their jobs, and they just meet and talk about ways to overcome those barriers. So like I mentioned, our organization has been using personal outcome measures for quite a while. We actually started using the personal outcome measures back in 1996, and we went through our first quality review in 1998. So as a result, we have gathered a lot of data, and I'll talk a little bit now about how we use the data on both a micro level and a macro level. So on a micro level, like on an individual level, our personal outcome measures information is used to develop individualized support plans. We do this through our AIMS database. We do regular check-ins through the outcome summary on the AIMS database as well. Here in Mississauga, we've elected to do them quarterly. So our support staff will do quarterly outcome summaries. We also use the goal setting and tracking through the goals notes on the AIMS database too. And we were able to use all this information to really tailor the resources that we provide in team meetings. And I think that's been the biggest benefit recently with the personal outcome measures that we've been using is as we started to connect with teams across our association and go to individual team meetings, we can look at which person is living in which home and look at their most recent interviews and things that they've told us and really tailor the resources that we can provide to that team when we attend team meetings. And on a macro level or an organizational level, we use the data we collect from the personal outcome measures for our quality management committee. Our quality management committee is a board committee that reviews our quality of supports, our personal outcome measures data, our staff satisfaction surveys and family satisfaction surveys and stuff like that. We use the POM results to identify topics for our breaking the barrier sessions. So if we notice a trend that's going down and we need a little more resources in there, we look for ways that we can provide those to our support staff. And identifying these trends gives us a really good opportunity to drill down on any areas of concern. So for example, over the years, like most of us, we've really struggled with the outcomes related to the social capital index. And as we've looked at those outcomes, we've realized that we just needed more training and development for our support staff on ways to support people to get more involved in their community. So we always known that building relationships is a challenge, being a part of a community, having a valued social role, participating as much as you want. We know those things are really difficult, but the staff are really struggling with ways to do it. And that's really what led us to all the work around social capital and building social capital with Dr. Al Condalucci. So the personal outcome measures and the social capital stuff we've learned through Dr. Condalucci have really worked hand in hand to support people to have a really high level of success in our community. And if talking about one story that really comes to mind when we talk about personal outcome measures is it's funny because it always goes back to one of the first people I ever interviewed when I started in this job. I started working on our outcomes team in 2001 when we were preparing for an accreditation review in 2003. And the lady that I interviewed at the time, she was really interested in joining the choir at her church. And it was one of those instances where the support staff who was supporting her during the interview kind of rolled their eyes a little bit, and which was really disrespectful, which we brought up after the interview. But the challenge is that this lady had said for years that she wanted to be a part of the choir at her church. And no matter what the support staff tried, it just didn't work. Either the lady would decide not to go or she would quit. But every time she had an interview, she would come back and say, I want to be part of the choir at my church. And I think the real benefit of the outcomes and where it's really had a positive impact here is that it constantly reminds you that you need to keep checking in. And it may not be that the person wants to quit the choir or not go to the choir, they change their mind. Maybe there's something else going on that we don't know and we just haven't figured out how to support that person properly yet. And it was through that connection to the building social capital and community connections that we really were able to figure out how to support her properly. It turns out all we need to do was find the right person to connect with in the choir and for her to be invited to audition. And she went and auditioned. And this was back now in 2007. And she's been a part of her choir ever since. She's built great relationships. She no longer receives support to attend church. Members of the choir come by and pick her up and give her a ride to and from church. And she's part of everything that goes on in that church community. So it's just a really good example and a good reminder of always continuing to check in, because you never know when you're going to figure it out, and to continually listen to people. I think that's about it for now. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, that's a great story, and I have vivid recollections of my very first personal outcome measures interview as well. It's great how that experience kind of stays with you for all these years. Hey, I did have one question. So at Community Living Mississauga, you said that you support about 3,000 people. Any strategies for coming up with a representative sample in terms of who you're going to interview for the year? How do you do that?
Right now, as we've like our mandate is that we provide support on our outcome support team. We provide most of our resources to people who are supported residentially. So our strategy is, as part of our expectations of support when people are agree to be supported by us, is that they'll participate in an outcome interview once every 2 years, and then they'll participate in a social capital inventory once every 2 years. So we have a list that we keep on our team. We connect with the manager and the support staff so they can reach out to the person they're supporting and find out a time that's most convenient for them. And once every 2 years, we schedule that interview and go out and do it. So our strategy, which has really worked for us, is that we've taken responsibility as a team for scheduling those interviews and making sure that they happen. And in terms of the rest of the people that we support, they mainly are mostly live at home with their families, and we do provide resources in terms of attending team meetings and providing resources to support staff for all the teams across our organization, but we just don't have the resources to provide personal outcome measures interviews for all of those people. But we will do them on an as-needed basis. Like if a person is interested in having an interview and doing planning, or if they're in a crisis and need some help to try to figure it out, then they can always come to us and we can go out and do an interview and try to help them get back on the right track.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
It's Matt here from Winnipeg.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. A question for Jamie, but I just wanted to ask one thing first before I just ask her. I'm looking on my screen and I see us as having 5 people viewing this webinar. Is it just us panelists here? Do we not have any attendees, or?
Yeah, we were just looking at that.
We're apparently we're having some difficulty, so we just decided we would go ahead and record it. I'm trying to reach out to people and figure out what the problem is, but I haven't been able to get the one person in, even though I've sent them another invite. So I don't know exactly what the problem is.
Okay. Okay, Jamie, great. I really enjoyed your topics there. I had one question related to when you mentioned about how you recognize that you're struggling with the outcomes from the social capital index. And so I'm just curious, like, are the efforts that you put into increasing those outcomes, like I think you said, you're talking about that developing staff training particularly for that, is that bearing out in the data that it's helping? Like, have you seen?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have the data right in front of me, but I do a quarterly report for our quality management committee. So I send all of our personal outcome measures data to them, but they like to look at it in terms of trends. So I will show them the totals for each quarter, and I go back in our report. It covers like a 2-year span, and you can see the rise in those outcomes over the last couple of years with the implementation of the building social capital and community connections. And what it was is that the personal outcomes is so important, but also we just found we needed more. Like, staff had a really good understanding of what somebody needed in their life, like how much they wanted to be connected, the roles they wanted to have, but they just didn't know how to do it. So we had to look for ways to provide those skills to our support staff. Right. And this building social capital and community connections really fit in well. So it was really a progression from what we learned from the personal outcome measures and making sure that we could adapt the supports we provide as an agency to make sure we're providing our staff with the right information and the proper skills to do those things.
Great. That's very encouraging. You know, when I look at our data, and we're certainly not as far along as you are. I mean, and you'll see when I speak about my agency, we're not nearly as far along in our journey with CQL and the personal outcome measures. But I noticed that as well. Like those, in particular, those outcomes that make up that social capital index is really where we're struggling the most in. And I mean, our agency isn't as big as yours, and we don't have the capacity yet to be able to do something like that. But that's the direction I see us heading to. So that's encouraging to hear that these concerted efforts really are making a difference.
Yeah, and it's just the understanding that support staff all have different skills, and how do you utilize each support staff skills in the best way possible? Because in terms of supporting someone to be connected, like, you need to have support staff who are comfortable talking to strangers and making connections and making introductions, and not everyone's good at that. So it's really looking at one of the things that we added into that building social capital and community connections training is different roles that staff can take so they can all be a part of the solution, even if they're not the most outgoing person. So everyone has a skill, and how do you utilize those skills to the best of their abilities?
Right.
And Jamie, you had mentioned that, the lady that wanted to join the choir, it was just a matter of making that one connection.
Yeah, right? It was really that one person, like finding someone who would invite her in where she felt welcomed. Because we would, the support staff would say, okay, it's Tuesday nights. The audition, you have to audition, you call them, you register to audition, you show up at Tuesday at 6 and you audition. And then she just would get scared and nervous, and for whatever reason, she would give us, she just wouldn't go, but she just wasn't feeling comfortable or welcomed. And when the support staff was able to realize that through some of the other training that we did, and identified someone in the choir who was really outgoing and personable and looked really friendly and said, you know, I know someone who's interested in joining. And keep in mind, this lady was a member of this church for probably 15 or 16 years at this point. So everybody knew who she was. And kind of pointed her out. And she said, oh, I know her. Hey, I heard you're interested in the choir. Do you want to come on Tuesday night and audition? And that was really all it took. Now, she wasn't in the choir the next week, but the process started there. And over the years, she's become really successful in the choir. She's built great relationships. She's part of a women's auxiliary at the church now. And she has made some really good friendships.
Great story. And it really just kind of demonstrates, you know, what the value is in doing this, you know, especially
and really just not giving up and continuing to listen to people, because along the way there could have been a lot of support staff who just said, you know what, this isn't going to work. But that wasn't what we're in it for. We want to make sure that we stick to our values, and we're going to respect people and listen to what they have to say until they tell us something differently.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Forbes. Matt, let me, if I can get my screen to move here. There we go. All right. So Matt, I have your slides up here, so I'll kind of go through them. You may need to prompt me when it's time to move on if I don't catch it. So okay. Matt Forbes has been a certified interviewer for over 10 years. His current role is coordinator of the Supported Independent Living Program, as well as the Community Day Services Program at St. Amant in Winnipeg. The programs provide outreach services to people who live at home with parents and have identified a goal of living independently or semi-independently. So, all right, Matt, take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. I kind of wish I had gone first now instead of Jamie. As you were speaking there, Jamie, I was sort of, very impressed with the organization and how far you are along in your journey. And then when you said that you'd been sort of with using personal outcome measures and involved with CQL since 1998, that made me feel a little bit better, because it's only been since about 2007, 2008 that we really started our journey. So Mike, if you want to just flip to the next slide, just my agency at a glance. We support 1,600 people across the province, and that's all of our services. Like we have clinical, all of clinicians here, and family support programs, various. But the areas that are accredited through CQL are in our residential services. So in our 24-hour homes, we have 156 people across about 85 or 90 homes. The Supported Independent Living Program, we have about 30 or 35 people in there. Home share, which is what we call our foster or proctor model here, is 31 people. And then the emergency foster services, that short-term placement stuff, is only 3 right now. We have in total about 1,800 staff with St. Amant, but within the residential services, it's more about 600 or 700. If you want to flip there. So our accreditation took place in 2012, and we have actually coming up next week is our next round of accreditation. And like Michael said, it was in 2008 that I was first certified as an interviewer, and we actually had, at one time we had a trainer here as well, but she's moved on. The way that we certainly, we don't have, I fall into that category, Jamie, what you were talking about with the agencies that don't have a dedicated team of doing this, and that sounds very wonderful. But it's just a part of my job, and so we don't have the kind of capacity right now to do what you guys do. But one day, I hope. But sort of what we do is we currently have 2 certified interviewers that conduct interviews, but we also have a team of interviewers that conduct interviews that's sort of uncertified, and then we have a validation process to sort of verify those determinations that are made. We keep that data separate from the interviews that myself and my coworker, who is also certified as well, separate, but we use that data for planning purposes and some more things that I'll get into in a second here. So individual level, primarily much similar to probably what everyone's doing. It drives the day-to-day supports for our staff. It's a roadmap for our staff. It's woven into the in-house training. Essentially the job of the direct support professional is to support people to live the lives they want to live, and how we learn that is using personal outcome measure interviews for discovery. On a macro level, it's really kind of the same sort of things. Like it's woven into mostly, if not all, of our training, policy development. Personal outcome measures makes up a big portion of our annual staff evaluations. One of the trends, so when we look at our data, one of the trends that we noticed early on too is that in the rights area, like that was something that was really low for us, and this was early on. So we made a real concerted effort to focus on helping people to learn about their rights and exercise rights, and what we could do to remove rights restrictions. And we're still struggling with that a bit. And so we've been sort of trying to develop a rights committee to review these audits and rights restrictions, but we're struggling with that. So I'm hoping to learn a little more about that process, maybe from you at another time. But that was what our earlier on focus was, and just sort of looking at the data for overall trends and our sort of 5-year strategic plans. It's sort of it influences the direction that our agency overall is headed. I don't have any particular success stories. I mean, there's so many around, but one of the things I can share is that really a big success of using that personal outcome measure data for us has been really finding out finding out like where people want to live and how they want to be supported. And so since our first accreditation piece, and part of our initial What Really Matters plan is sort of to figure that piece out. And we've actually, since that accreditation, we've had 10 or 12 people that we realized were being over supported in like a 24-hour shift staffed home, and they didn't need that kind of support. They didn't want that kind of support, but no one had really asked in the past. So those people are kind of the origin of our SIL program. So moving people out into their own apartments and putting support staff in place when they need it, and so that was really sort of the genesis of our SIL program. So I personally view that as a big success for us. So I think that's it for me.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. I was wondering a little bit about, could you talk a little bit about the POM training that you do for your direct support professionals?
Okay, sure. Yeah, we have a series of orientations that we do, and the one in particular is we just call it the fundamentals of person-centered supports, and it's really what it is when we lost our in-house certified trainer, we didn't have the capacity to do 4-day self-assessments, and so we would actually once a year somebody would come in and conduct maybe 2 4-day self-assessments, but that's only hitting 25 people in a year. And so one of the things we realized we needed to do to be able to to sort of change our culture and really enmesh the outcomes into our staffing is to sort of develop this training. And it's a little bit based on the I'm not sure if you still do that, but there's like sort of a 2-day conference style self-assessment, where instead of interviewing actual people, it's more of a role play, and it's only a 2-day sort of session. But it's a little bit of that mixed in with some some SRV stuff, and it's like an 8-hour training that we do. But it's also like the outcomes are sort of built into the home, that in-house training within each home. So there's models set up where, like, each month at team meetings, they tackle one outcome, and they look at the people who may live in that home and see if it's present for them. And if it isn't, then what are we going to do to make that outcome present? And then they sort of review that annually and in somebody's plan.
That's great. So all of your DSPs will have some level of familiarity, at least with the POM.
For sure, yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Matt. So at this point, we will move on to Jennifer. So Jennifer Dance. Jennifer has experience as a residential manager and currently manages the Supported Independent Living program at Community Living Oakville. Jennifer is a safe management instructor and is currently utilizing POMs as part of a grant for the Quality of Life project. So, all right, take it away, Jennifer.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for the invite for allowing us at Community Living Oakville to be part of this webinar. I have a team of people around me as well who are all really interested in hearing how other organizations are utilizing the personal outcome measures. Here at Community Living Oakville, we've had a grant, a Trillium grant, a seed grant, and we've joined with Central West Developmental Services, and we are, so like I said, we have a seed grant, and so we've been working, I think, since about October, I think, of last year we started, and we had a facilitator, and unfortunately she left for another position, so we're still working towards filling that position right now. But our organization is relatively new. We've been doing it for about 2 months, the interviews. We did our first round of general training in about January of 2018. And in March of this year, we had 2 people myself and another person received our reliable interviewer certification. Since about March, we've completed approximately 20 interviews, and mainly we've started to focus on residential and the supported independent living programs. On a micro level, once the interview has been completed, what we've been doing is sharing that information with teams and individual support workers, and trying to figure out how where we need the extra support, and that's been working on really well. On a macro level, we've been looking at trends, and we've noticed one of the trends that we're kind of lacking in is people being part of their community. So we've decided as a team to have a theme each month, and I believe in June we were going to start our themes of giving back. So as we're going to be promoting that, so people can be more active members of the community and giving back. In terms of a success story, we've had at the beginning, one of the first interviews that we did when we were getting our certification was a young woman. And one of the goals that she had come up with, or one of the things she had mentioned in her interview, that she wanted to reconnect with the foster family that she had. And that is well underway right now. We're working with the Children's Aid, and they're trying to connect with the family to get her, and we're trying to get her more natural supports. She identified a job that she was interested in, and within a few days of starting to ask questions, she had paid employment. And the other thing that we're working on is fire safety plans, also for people who live more independently. I have Irene here with me, and she was going to talk a little bit about, I know you were interested in our grant and how we got about the grant. Was that true, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we welcome that.
So,
hello, Irene.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, is it Michael?
Yes, hello.
Can you hear me? Hi.
You can hear you.
No? Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. So what, do you have a question in particular to the grant?
Oh, no, we were just wondering if you could just give us an overview of, what the grant is and how it led you to the personal outcome measures.
Okay, so we had actually submitted a proposal to the Trillium Foundation, and it was to implement this training and kind of, this culture into the organization. So we had applied through the seed grant, which is the beginning grant, and partnered with another organization. Actually, the other organization partnered with us in this capacity. So we received the grant and implemented 2 different trainers, one actually, well, sorry, we hired one trainer to kind of lead the project. And as part of the grant, we also put some aside some capacity for accessing the CQL and their materials and their trainers as well. So the grant was able to cover the cost, almost 95% of the cost for what we had started with. So now, as a second sort of step to this, we are applying through the Trillium Foundation again. We actually did last week for the GROW grant. And the GROW grant will be to now expand this to both agencies, our agency and the other agency we had partnered with, and to kind of have the capacity to keep the trainer for an additional 2 or 3 years, and to kind of sustain the project. In terms of long-term sustainability, I'm also listening to, I know Mississauga has an in-house trainer, which is fantastic, it's fabulous, and that really makes a huge difference for the organization. But even with some of the things that we just heard today, to implement this type of culture into the organization by training more people in the organization and kind of making it part of their their daily routine. I know that one person can't sustain and withhold this whole kind of big project, but if we brought more people on board and kind of maybe 5% of their job became dealing with personal outcome measures or training or kind of sharing the culture, that would make a big difference. In terms of the proposal, it was mainly to just implement. I know that for the seed grant, the starting grant, it was interesting because the Trillium will fund things like new initiatives and training and so forth for organizations that change the culture and build capacity and provide opportunities. So they're pretty open to that. So there's a huge potential there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So have you applied for anything in the past, or you just organizationally allocated a position to this?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I said, do you have a personal outcome measures? Do you have a position of this type in your organization? Is that what you were wondering for the proposal, or I'm not really sure?
Oh, no. No, I was just wondering, how you use the grant to get the personal outcome measures going at your organization. But there are, I have worked with other organizations that have used great grant funding to implement personal outcome measures as well. So that's really great that you all are doing it. And one of the things I appreciated in working with Community Living Oakville and Central West was the partnership aspect of it. The two organizations that are partnering to use the POMs to implement it, and I'm sure that has some advantages for you.
Michael, I have to apologize. I walked into this sort of, past the, I wasn't sure what Michael. So Matt, I apologize. I actually know who you are now. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Well, thank you, Jennifer and Irene, and thanks for telling us a little bit about what you're doing, and thank you to Matt and Jamie as well for telling us about what they're doing. I just wanted to close by just going over, if organizations are interested in utilizing the personal outcome measures, we do have several training options, and these are all on our website. It's www.c-q-l.org, and I'll put up that link here in a second. We have so we have workshops. We have intro to personal outcome measures. We have a personal outcome measures training for DSPs, and a training regarding person-centered planning with the outcomes. And again, here are the links to some resources. So we do have Canada Connect email updates, so CQL activities that are specific to Canada. We have additional resources and webinars. So by using this link, we have quite a few resources available now. We have a number of publications, and in fact, you can use this link to download the full personal outcome measures manual. You can download that for free through the resource library link, and we've been doing webinars at least one per month, and in fact, we're going to be doing another webinar tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so check that out, and we'll be having those on a regular basis. I also encourage you to check out the CQL Facebook e-community. So there are a lot of great conversations that happen on that community. It is a closed group, so you do have to ask to be admitted into the group, but that shouldn't be a problem. So you just start in the group, and if you have questions, if you ever have challenges organizationally or in personal outcome measures interviews, you can put up questions, and others will share some advice or strategy, and the CQL staff are active on that community as well. So if you have a particular challenge that you want to put up there for discussion, it will definitely get answered. And so we have a number of resources there. And stay in touch too. So if you have specific questions, you can contact me. My email is mclawson@thecouncil.org. And so I am the Canada liaison for CQL. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to get in touch. So at this point, I want to thank our presenters once again for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure, folks. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from you soon.